When I named this talk, a few days later, I was like, why did I use those horrible words? Risk and fear and liability. They're all just horrible words I just want to walk away from and throw away. And I think part of this talk is trying to understand how to navigate them, because um, I live in London, and the the environment that we're operating in over here is one which is absolutely replete with fear, with bureaucracy, with administration, and with a need to control. And there's something that's happened as the education system has developed, which has taken the onus of learning away from the child and put it on the educator. So there's a liability that lies with the educator in terms of the risk the child takes. And actually, the call here is to trust children, is to absolutely trust the learner to go on their own learning journey and to be there as a partner rather than someone who takes responsibility for their learning. Because actually, when you take responsibility for learning from a child, you're robbing them from the opportunity to learn. I'm going to share a few stories as I go along. One of them, amazing, Peter. The photo you showed of the children on the edge of that cliff is exactly the story I was going to share, which was I was really lucky. My family moved to Yemen when I was 10 in the early 90s. And there's a road. Yemen is amazing. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's incredibly mountainous. It's got really steep valleys. It's got terraces on the valleys. It's got beautiful, incredible adobe mud brick buildings right at the top of the cliffs that overlook the whole world. But we used to go on this car ride from Sana'a, the capital, and it was the Hodeidah road that goes down to the coast. But my family would drive up out of Sana'a along that road because it was incredibly mountainous, and you could stop on the edges of the cliff and take a look at the view. And I am blessed with parents who trusted me and who were exhilarated by the senses that the world offers you. So we would go out and you find this particular spot, and we'd go and park the car and then walk all the way to the edge of the cliff. And I remember with my parents never ever being told to be careful at the edge of the cliff. We would just go off to the edge, and each of us would find the spaces that called to us. Because when you stand right at the edge of the cliff, you feel the wind blow into your face as it has passed through the valleys, across the terraces, around the meanders, and up towards you. And the way that it hits your face and you breathe it gives you so much more information about that land than you could get 2 meters back. Because when you go there, you can feel how the birds rise up on the orographic wind as it goes up and ride those waves and then carry themselves up on the thermals. And you can see the mountains on the other side. You can see how people have worked the fields. You can see how the rivers start right at the top of the mountains and go down. And just by standing right at your edge, you have an entire education in place, in sense, and in your belonging to the world, more than anything that you can learn in a book or in a film even. So I was really lucky with parents who trusted me. And not only did we go to the edge of the cliff, we would explore. So each of us would find that jutting out bit of rock that felt really good, because actually when you sat back, had a little bit of a bump that you could scratch your back on as you enjoyed the view. And you could find your footing, and sometimes you trip up. But there's something about children that we forget. We've kind of forgotten it exists altogether, but children are competent because children were created to live in this world, and they were created to find their own edges. And then this thing happened one day where we brought some friends over and we took them up to the cliff. And it was really exciting to be able to take them to this viewpoint that we loved. So we brought these friends over, took them off the, took them around to, and kind of, ran up to the cliff. And I remember as I was running up to the cliff, I heard this shriek behind me because one of our friends were like, "No, don't go there!" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "No, no, you're gonna fall." I was like, "Fall?" And this friend just absolutely, this really dear family friend, she absolutely could not fathom the idea that we would get all the way up to the cliff. And she didn't even have vertigo. She was just afraid. And it took me a while to understand what was happening because as I got close to the cliff and looked back and could see her almost in hysterics trying to pull me back, I didn't understand why at first because I was only 10 and my parents had never tried to pull me back. I didn't understand that there was something to be afraid of. And it took me a while stopping and just watching her until I realized that she was scared. And in that moment, when I realized that she was scared, uh, there was a choice I had. I could ignore her and walk up to the cliff, but I could tell that she wasn't comfortable. I could not go to the cliff. I could stay back and lose out on that opportunity. Or I could try to take her with me, but she was really, really hesitant and she definitely didn't want to do that. And those three options are something that I've carried along with me as I work with kids, because I do very similar work to what many of you have described of trying to be with children in freedom and entrusting their capabilities and their abilities. And there was a fantastic parent once, one of the most enabling and permissive parents I've worked with, who was like, "I'm so glad my kid gets to spend time with you because you give him freedom that I struggle to." Um, um, and and as time has gone by, I've realized that we act as mediators between there's a need in today's world to have mediators for people to be able to buffer the fear and liability that the world carries around in its relationships with children. There's a word, many of you mentioned books. I wasn't going to mention this book, but I happen to have it with me and I highly recommend it. There's a book called Kith, and I don't know, give me a thumbs up if you know what the word kith means. Yay, a little thumbs up there. Great. Now, many of you will know the word kin, and kin and kith go together quite easily. And often when we think of the word kinship and kin, we think of the people who we grow up in relationship with. And the people who grew up in relationship with our parents, our grandparents, maybe our very close neighbors, our cousins. It's the people with whom we form a relationship with ourselves and with each other, an understanding of who we are in the world. And that word is common. It's familiar because we all grow up with the people around us. Now, the thing with kith is that most of us don't know what it is, or we think it's the same thing as kin. They just go together. But while kin is the people we grew up in relationship with, kith is the land that we grew up in relationship with. Because just like our identities and our sense of self and our personhood and our place in the world is developed through relationship with people, it's developed with our relationship with soil, it's with water, with mud, with air, with grit, with all the furry creatures and the slimy creatures that as children, our children, our ancestors' children, all had relationships with their kith. And we had relationships with our kith far and wide. There's a map of the space that children used to occupy just in the 1950s. A study was made in Sheffield where children in the 50s would roam 6, 7, 8 miles away from their homes. An absolute freedom and absolute trust to go fishing. It was about their trips to go fishing, to find the perfect fishing spot at 6 or 7 or 8. And today, a 6, 7, 8-year-old will not leave their home unaccompanied. If they did, they would be observed. And the amount of trust in our children, we have 1 minute left, has absolutely dwindled. There's so much more I want to say. I'm gonna slowly wrap up over there. Apart from an invitation to notice our own fears, and what I found with time is actually what allows me to trust children is that I know them. Just like Peter spoke about the factory schooling, I think what really helps is I'll be done in 1 minute. What really helps is knowing our children and having relationships with them because every child is different, but also allowing our children to have relationships with the land. Because 2 weeks ago, I haven't told our local council this yet, but the children in the setting I was with walked on the pond because it was frozen. And I knew that they knew that I knew that they knew that I knew that they knew that the ice would be strong enough to carry their weight. But only we knew that. And nobody in local government will know that because they don't hang out by the pond every day. So it's about getting to know a place, it's getting to know our children, and it's about talking about it, having conversations, and working out how we can be safe together. But let's get to that edge because that's also what we need to find to be able to survive this poly crisis that's coming up, understanding how to navigate the changing ecosystems and the changing capabilities. Thank you so much.